Here's a crazy fact. In 1920, the British Empire controlled 412 million people. That was almost a quarter of everyone alive on Earth. And they ruled over 13.7 million square miles. That's about 24% of the planet's land. People literally said the sun never sets on the British Empire because at any given moment, it was daytime somewhere in their territory. So here's the question. How does a tiny island nation, smaller than the state of Oregon, end up controlling a quarter of the world? And how do they lose it all in just a few decades? I'm Jack, this is Blueprints of Power. And today, we're breaking down the most influential empire in modern history. The one that shaped the world we live in today. Let's go. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Blueprints of Power. I'm Jack.
I'm Lily.
And I'm Charlie.
And today we're tackling the big one, the British Empire. This is the empire that basically created the modern world.
Wait, created the modern world? That's a bold claim.
It's actually pretty accurate. The British Empire spread the English language, parliamentary democracy, capitalism, industrialization, and legal systems across the globe. Whether that was good or bad is complicated, but the impact is undeniable.
And we're talking about an empire that at its peak controlled Canada, Australia, New Zealand, India, huge parts of Africa, the Caribbean, Hong Kong, Singapore, Egypt, parts of the Middle East.
That's like everywhere.
Pretty much. At its height in the 1920s, the British Empire was the largest empire in human history.
Bigger than Rome?
Way bigger than the Mongols too. About 13.7 million square miles compared to the Mongols' 12 million.
But wait. How does a small island do this? Britain's not even that big.
That's exactly what makes this story so fascinating. Britain had about 40 million people when the empire was at its peak. They were ruling over 400 million.
So how'd they do it?
Technology, naval power, economics, strategy, and a lot of things we'd consider pretty brutal today.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this probably isn't all sunshine and tea parties.
Definitely not. The British Empire brought modernization and development to some places, but it also involved conquest, exploitation, and oppression. It's complicated.
Which is why we're going to break it all down, the rise, the reign, and the fall. How Britain built this empire, how they ran it, and how it all came apart.
I'm ready for this.
Let's do it. Lily, take us back to the beginning. When does Britain start becoming an empire?
Okay, so Britain starts as just an island. England, Scotland, Wales, they're not even united into one country until 1707. And for a long time, they're not a major power. Spain, France, the Ottoman Empire, those are the big players.
So Britain's like the underdog.
Totally. But a few things change that. First, 1588, the Spanish Armada. Spain sends a massive fleet to invade England, and the English Navy, which is smaller but faster and more maneuverable, defeats them.
So they win a huge naval battle.
Yes. And this establishes England as a serious naval power. They realize if we control the seas, we can punch above our weight.
So they go all in on the Navy.
Exactly. And second, they start colonizing. In the 1600s, England establishes colonies in North America. Jamestown in 1607, Plymouth in 1620. They're competing with Spain, France, and the Dutch for territory in the Americas.
So it's a race.
A total race. And England also starts setting up trading posts in India, Africa, and the Caribbean. They create companies like the East India Company to manage trade and eventually territory.
Wait, a company runs parts of the empire?
Yes. The East India Company was a private corporation that had its own army, made its own laws, and basically governed huge parts of India for over 200 years.
That's wild.
Super wild. But it's how Britain expands without the government having to pay for everything. The company makes money, the government gets taxes, and power win-win for them.
Not so much for the people being colonized, I'm guessing.
Correct. Third major factor, the slave trade. This is dark, but it's a huge part of how Britain gets rich. Starting in the 1600s, British ships transport millions of enslaved Africans to plantations in the Americas and Caribbean.
The triangle trade.
Exactly. Ships go from Britain to Africa with manufactured goods, trade those for enslaved people, take them to the Americas, then bring back sugar, tobacco, and cotton to Britain. The profits are enormous.
That's horrifying.
It really is. And it fuels British economic growth for over 150 years until slavery is finally abolished in 1833.
Okay, so they've got naval power, colonies, and they're making money from trade and slavery. What happens next?
The Industrial Revolution. Starting in the mid-17th century, Britain invents or perfects things like the steam engine, mechanized textile production, railways, and industrial manufacturing.
So they're becoming high-tech.
Way ahead of everyone else, and this gives them massive advantages. They can produce goods cheaper and faster than anyone. They can build better ships and weapons. They can move troops and supplies quickly on railways.
So they're becoming the tech giant of the 1800s.
Exactly. Like if Britain was a startup, they just IPO'd and became a trillion-dollar company. And now they start expanding aggressively. In the late 1700s and 1800s, Britain takes more and more territory. They take control of India after defeating local rulers and French competitors. They colonize Australia starting in 1788. They control huge chunks of Africa during the Scramble for Africa in the late 1800s.
The scramble for Africa?
European powers literally carved up the African continent between them. Britain got a huge share. Egypt, Sudan, Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana. It's a massive land grab.
And the people already living there?
Either conquered, pushed aside, or forced to work within British systems. It was colonization, often violent, and it had devastating effects on local populations.
This is getting heavy.
It is. The British Empire brought railways, telegraphs, schools, and hospitals to some places. But it also involved exploitation, extraction of resources, destruction of local cultures, and in some cases, famines and massacres.
So it's really complicated.
Very complicated. Britain genuinely believed they were civilizing the world. They called it the white man's burden. But that ideology was used to justify conquering and exploiting other peoples.
Yikes.
Yeah, but by the early 1900s, Britain is the global superpower. They have colonies on every continent. The Royal Navy is the strongest in the world. London is the financial capital of the planet. And the British pound is the global currency.
So they're at the top.
Absolutely at the top. And now the question is, how do they run all of this?
All right, quick break. If you're digging this episode, and honestly, this is one of the most important empires we've covered, hit that follow button right now. Subscribe to Blueprints of Power on whatever platform you're using. We're building an amazing community of people who want to understand how power actually works, and we want you in it. Share this with your friends, your family, your teachers. Post it on your socials. Help us spread the word. Next week, we're covering the Aztec Empire, pyramids, sacrifice, and one of the most sophisticated civilizations in the Americas before European contact. You're not going to want to miss it. And please, please, please leave us a review. It helps us grow the show and reach more listeners. Plus, we genuinely love hearing what you think. All right, back to the British Empire. Because we're about to get into how they actually governed a quarter of the planet, let's go.
Okay, so Britain controls a quarter of the world. How do they actually manage that?
This is where the British get really strategic. Let me break down their recipe for power.
Hit me with the recipe.
Okay, ingredient number 1, naval dominance. The Royal Navy is everywhere. They have the most ships, the best technology, and naval bases all over the world. Gibraltar, Singapore, the Falklands, Malta.
So they control the oceans.
Completely. If you control the seas, you control trade. You can move armies where you need them. You can protect your territory and threaten everyone else's. The Royal Navy is the foundation of British power.
Rule Britannia. Britannia rules the waves.
Exactly. That's literally their anthem. And ingredient number 2, economic control through trade. Britain doesn't just want territory, they want resources and markets. They extract raw materials from the colonies, cotton from India, rubber from Malaysia, gold from South Africa, tea from India, and so on.
So they're taking stuff.
Taking and buying cheap. Then they ship those raw materials to British factories, manufacture goods, and sell those goods back to the colonies at a profit. It's an economic system designed to benefit Britain.
So the colonies are both the supplier and the customer.
Exactly. And they can't opt out. Britain controls the system. This makes British merchants and industrialists incredibly wealthy.
What about the people in the colonies?
They're often worse off. Local industries get destroyed because they can't compete with cheap British manufactured goods. Famines happen when resources are exported instead of feeding local populations. It's extraction, not partnership.
That sounds really unfair.
It was. Ingredient number 3, divide and rule. Britain is really smart about this. In places like India, they don't try to control everything directly. They make alliances with local rulers. They exploit existing divisions between different ethnic or religious groups, and they use local soldiers to enforce British rule.
So they're turning people against each other.
Sometimes, yeah. In India, the British Indian Army was mostly made up of Indian soldiers, called sepoys, led by British officers. At one point, there were 200,000 Indian soldiers, but only about 40,000 British troops in India.
Wait, so Indians were enforcing British rule over other Indians?
Exactly. That's how a small number of British people could control hundreds of millions of Indians. You use existing power structures and local forces.
That's pretty calculating.
Very calculating. Ingredient number 4, infrastructure and modernization. This is where it gets complicated. Britain did build things. Railways in India, over 40,000 miles of track telegraph lines connecting the empire, ports, schools, hospitals, legal systems.
So they're building stuff up.
They are. But here's the question. Who benefits? The railways were built to move British goods and troops, not primarily to help Indians. The schools taught British history and values, not local culture. The legal system was based on British law, not local traditions.
So it's modernization on British terms.
Exactly. Some of this infrastructure later helped countries develop after independence, but at the time, it was designed to serve British interests.
That makes sense.
Ingredient number 5, cultural influence. Britain spreads English language, British customs, British sports, cricket, rugby, tea time. They establish universities based on British models. They create a class of local elites educated in Britain who run the colonial administration.
So they're making people more British.
That's the goal. And it works to some extent. English becomes a global language. British legal systems influence countries worldwide. Parliamentary democracy spreads. These things outlast the empire itself.
So even after the empire ends, the influence doesn't.
Exactly. Ingredient number 6, flexible governance. Britain governs different colonies differently. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, which are mostly white British settlers, get self-government pretty early. They're called dominions.
So they have freedom?
A lot of it. They run their own affairs, but still pledge loyalty to the British crown. Meanwhile, India is ruled directly by the British government after 1858 African colonies are controlled with even firmer hands. Britain adapts based on the situation.
So they're not one size fits all.
Right. And during the Victorian era, Queen Victoria's reign from 1837 to 1901, the empire is at its cultural peak. Britain sees itself as the center of civilization, progress, and morality. London is the world's largest city. British culture influences fashion, literature, science, architecture everywhere.
So they're feeling pretty confident.
Very confident. Maybe too confident. Because by the early 1900s, cracks are starting to show.
Oh, here it comes.
What starts going wrong?
Before we get into the fall of the British Empire, I just want to say thank you for being part of this community. Every week, we get messages from listeners about how these episodes help them understand the world better, and that's exactly why we make this show. If you're enjoying Blueprints of Power, share it with someone who'd love it. A friend, a teacher, a parent, anyone curious about history and power. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and our website where we post extra content and behind-the-scenes stuff. Next week is the Aztec Empire, one of the most sophisticated civilizations in the Americas before European contact. We're talking floating gardens, human sacrifice, massive pyramids, and a tragic ending. It's going to be fascinating. And if you haven't left a review yet, please do. It genuinely helps the show grow, and we love reading your thoughts. All right, time to talk about how the British Empire, the largest in history, came apart. Let's get into it.
Okay, so Britain's at its peak in the early 1900s. What causes the decline?
It's not one thing. It's a combination. First big problem, World War I. From 1914 to 1918, Britain fights Germany and its allies. And Britain wins, but at a massive cost.
How massive?
Almost 1 million British soldiers dead. The economy is devastated. Britain takes on enormous debt, mostly to the United States. And suddenly, Britain isn't the world's financial center anymore, New York is.
So the war weakens them financially.
Hugely. And it also changes how colonized peoples see Britain. Soldiers from India, Africa, and the Caribbean fought for Britain in WWI. They're promised more rights and self-governance, but after the war, those promises aren't kept.
So people are getting upset?
Very upset. Nationalist movements start growing. In India, leaders like Mahatma Gandhi begin pushing for independence through non-violent resistance.
Gandhi, the peaceful protest guy.
Yes, he organizes boycotts of British goods, peaceful marches, and civil disobedience. And it's effective because it makes Britain look bad internationally if they crack down violently.
So they're stuck.
Exactly. And then comes World War II. From 1939 to 1945, Britain fights Nazi Germany again. And again, they win. But they're absolutely exhausted. Cities are bombed, the economy is in ruins, and they've taken on massive debts to the U.S.
So 2 world wars basically broke Britain.
Economically, yes, and they can't afford to maintain the empire anymore. Plus, the United States and the Soviet Union, the new superpowers, are both anti-colonial. They're pushing Britain to give up the empire.
Why would the US be anti-colonial? We had colonies too.
The U.S. sees itself as born from anti-colonial revolution. Plus, American businesses want access to markets that Britain controls. So there's ideological and economic reasons to push decolonization.
So Britain's under pressure.
Massive pressure. And independence movements are getting stronger everywhere. In 1947, India gains independence. And that's huge because India was the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. If India's gone, what's the point of holding everything else?
So India was that important?
India had 400 million people and generated enormous wealth for Britain. Losing it is a massive blow. And Indian independence inspires other colonies. In the 1950s and 60s, there's a wave of decolonization. African countries gain independence. Ghana in 1957, Nigeria in 1960, Kenya in 1963.
So the empire's just breaking apart.
Quickly. Some transitions are peaceful, but others are violent. In Kenya, there's an uprising called the Mau Mau Rebellion. Britain responds brutally. Concentration camps, torture, thousands of deaths. It's a dark chapter.
Yikes.
And in 1956, there's the Suez Crisis. Britain and France try to maintain control of the Suez Canal in Egypt, but the US and Soviet Union force them to back down. It's humiliating and shows that Britain isn't a superpower anymore.
So they're losing power and prestige.
Exactly. By the 1970s, most of the empire is gone. Hong Kong is one of the last major holdings, and Britain returns it to China in 1997.
So what's left?
Not much. Some small territories like the Falkland Islands and Gibraltar. But the British Empire as a political entity is over. However, in 1949, Britain creates the Commonwealth of Nations, a voluntary association of former colonies.
So they're trying to stay connected?
Yeah, countries like Canada, Australia, India, Nigeria, they're independent but maintain cultural and economic ties with Britain. The queen, now king, is still the symbolic head of the Commonwealth.
So there's still a connection.
There is. And the legacy of the British Empire is everywhere. English is the global language of business, science, and diplomacy. Parliamentary democracy is the model for many governments. British legal systems influence countries worldwide. Sports like cricket and rugby spread through the empire.
But there's negative legacy too, right?
Absolutely. Borders drawn by the British, especially in Africa and the Middle East, ignored ethnic and cultural divisions and created conflicts that still exist today. Economic exploitation left many former colonies underdeveloped. Cultural suppression damaged indigenous traditions.
So it's really complicated.
Very complicated. The British Empire shaped the modern world in profound ways, some positive, many negative, and we're still dealing with that legacy today.
All right, we've covered the rise, the reign, and the fall of the British Empire. Time for lessons. What can we learn from the largest empire in history? Charlie, you go first.
Okay, here's mine. You can't run on debt and reputation forever. The British Empire looked unstoppable, but 2 world wars exposed that they were overstretched and broke. The lesson: no matter how powerful you seem, if the fundamentals, economy, resources, public support, aren't there, you'll eventually fall. It's true for empires, companies, even people.
Fundamentals matter.
Always.
That's really good. Mine's about the power of ideas over force. Britain ruled through military might for a long time, but they ultimately lost to ideas: nationalism, self-determination, human rights. Gandhi and others proved that ideas and nonviolent resistance can defeat even the most powerful empires. The lesson? Cultural and moral power can be stronger than military power.
Ideas outlast armies.
Exactly.
Love that. All right. Mine's about legacy. The British Empire ended, but its influence is everywhere. Language, law, technology, culture, even the problems it created. The lesson? Your legacy isn't just what you build. It's how it affects people long after you're gone. And that means thinking carefully about not just what you're doing, but what you're leaving behind.
Think about the future, not just the present.
Exactly, because your impact will outlast you for better or worse.
That's perfect.
So, 3 lessons from the British Empire. Maintain your fundamentals, remember that ideas can defeat force, and always think about your legacy.
The British Empire is fascinating, massive impact.
For better and worse.
Absolutely. All right, next week we're heading to the Americas for the Aztec Empire. We're talking pyramids, floating gardens, human sacrifice, sophisticated astronomy, and a tragic collision with Spanish conquistadors. It's an incredible story.
Wait, floating gardens?
Floating gardens. They're called chinampas, and they're genius.
Okay, I'm already hooked. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for hanging with us on Blueprints of Power.
I'm Lily.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Jack, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.